So it says here the Harbor Island People Mover was an automated guideway transit people mover service in Tampa, built in 1985. It says that, where was I just hooked up to? It marked the return of rail transit to Tampa since the closure of the streetcar network in 1946. $7 million to complete. Former President Gerald Ford took part in the inaugural ride. Very interesting. Ridership remained relatively low, like you kind of said. 1989, ridership averaged 1,200 riders on a weekday, 1,500 on the weekend. Then you had the shuttle bus service coming in, which probably took away from those riders. It also says that the money given to the city for the closure of the system in a settlement with the ownership served as the foundation of an endowment to cover the operating expenses of the Tico line streetcar. Interesting. Fast forward to today, this is kind of an interesting idea to come back. I mean, we have so many more people living downtown. It's just a different world. Do you think something like that would be popular today?
Um, it probably could at some degree. You know, the hard part about transit systems, especially when you're in the fixed systems, is really trying to anticipate the number of people that are going to be using it today versus 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Are they still going to go back and forth and still grow? And
Look at this thing, man.
I mean, that's
How cool.
at that time it was. I think it was popular because tourists would come in and you would take it for the first time to get over. But in
And then
terms
you
of
go, okay, we're done here.
yeah, and there may have been a few downtown or Harbor Island residents at the time. There weren't very many that would take it if they were working in the downtown and coming back. But there wasn't, after a while, there wasn't much of a reason to go back and forth to Harbor Island unless you wanted something to eat and or if you were there coming into downtown.
So Real Tampa has actually posted some videos of downtown from the late 1980s. Can you pull up on Instagram at Real Tampa and pull up some of those videos that he just put out? Because he's got these amazing videos of the late 80s in downtown Tampa. And you've got these new office towers going up. You've got the People Mover, the new Harbor Island development. It seems like at that time there was a decent amount of momentum here that wasn't seen until at least 20 years later, right before the recession in the mid 2000s. It seems like there was kind of this really good
Hmm.
momentum in our urban core, and it fell flat for a couple decades. And I think maybe that's what I'm remembering as a kid going to downtown, this kind of blighted office worker area that didn't have life outside of that.
Yeah, there was a surge of private.
Yeah, here you
In,
go. Here's a video of riding the People Mover in the 1980s.
yeah, that's
Look at
it.
that. Sorry to cut you off.
There was a surge of private investment in the early 80s. And but by the time the late 80s and early 90s came in, the private side really kind of dried up. And the investment that was taking shape after that was really from the public sector. You had the seaport terminal that was starting to move forward from the port. So that was an investment. The Florida Aquarium that came in 95. Again, another public investment, and then the arena that came in a few years later. So those types of developments were the big drivers, but it became really the public side that was taking the initiative to begin redeveloping or adding to the fabric.
People are commenting on this video of downtown in the 80s with this People Mover line. People are saying, how the hell did we lose this? People Mover was great. Imagine how much easier it would be to avoid traffic if we kept this. The rhetoric around public transportation through rail,
Hmm.
right, is such a popular topic now. So, and we're jumping ahead a little bit, but there's so much public will for something like this. From a planner's perspective, right? I think when you first started, it was all about, and you even said this, getting people in and out, an emphasis on
Hmm.
parking, an emphasis on traffic efficiency, right? Why do you think things have shifted? Why is there so much emphasis on rail? Is it simply just because there's so much traffic today?
I think that's it. I mean, obviously, it would provide another
Yeah.
form of mobility, and other large cities which have major traffic problems have good metro systems. And for any of us that travel to cities where there's a good metro system, we always come back talking about what a great system it is, because we depend on it while we're there, and it's so easy for us to use. We're not there with our car driving through and having a decision whether to take it or not, or go somewhere else. So they are great systems. It just always gets back to, can you do it feasibly? What's the feasibility of putting a system in place, and then what's the cost? And then after that are there other options? The other part is a lot of systems in other cities have a bus system, which is usually just as good as their rail system. So when you get off the rail, if you need to take a bus, you don't have any apprehensions about going on it. It gets you where you want to go. It's regular. Here we struggle with our bus system as to exactly who is it serving, the level of service, how much does it cost, all those things. So until we can solve those things, it becomes people are just frozen. My first meeting that I was sent to in 1986 was a meeting over in Pinellas County about the high-speed rail, and the discussion then was, what should be the policy of the area of the region on high-speed rail, and the same discussion that we have today on where rail is going to go, the cost, where the stations were, they were having that same discussion 40 years ago, and so they've never been able to get to the next level on the rail planning.
Why do you think that is? 40 years. What a ridiculous amount of time. I think about the Riverwalk example and how 30 years ago, 20 years ago, there's a plan for Riverwalk, and that foundation is laid, and decades later, the plan comes to life, and it's something that so many people enjoy. 40 years ago, had those plans been in place, we might have an efficient rail system here in our area. Maybe, right?
Yeah, we probably have a couple of lines.
Couple lines, call it. So why do you think that is? Why is it so difficult for this region in regards to transportation?
I think you have a lot of different constituencies. And then it gets back to we haven't been able to put forward a plan that can create the coalescence of all of those constituencies. There's been a lot of concepts, a lot of different alignments, but for some reason it hasn't been presented to a point where people say, yeah, that's what we want. We all agree on it. And then the cost and the funding part of it. It just scares people away.
Yeah.
That it becomes difficult. It got to the point where I would remember at one point joking with people saying, with the amount of money that it was costing, amount of money that we're talking about building a rail system, we could easily just bought up all the land around downtown and put 50,000 people there, and that way they wouldn't have to use rail to get downtown.
So even at that time, the cost conversation was at the forefront.
Yeah.
Wow.
And even in earlier years, people just didn't have it because our roads were not really that congested. Malfunction Junction was always that way, but people could get around Tampa fairly easily. It was really hard to make the argument that congestion was a main problem, that you needed to invest a lot more.
Yeah.
People just really were able to get around downtown or down in Tampa fairly easy.
Boy, if you had a time machine.
Hey guys, if you want to watch the full episode of this clip, click right here. Make sure to subscribe by clicking right here. Thank you for watching.